Welcome to Church Public. I am Odegaard, your host today. Let's go ahead and get started. Like many other corporations, Oreo and Nestle and Dove and all of these other places, the North Face apparently is now officially gay or trans or something. We'll talk about that. And Representative Alexandria Occasio Cortez, or AOC for short, is big mad about religious freedom in America. And actually, I kind of agree with her.
You know, there are so many faiths that do not have the same definition of life as fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And exactly the point. I think our conclusions might be different a little bit, so we'll get to that. But the question really is, then which faith is correct? Is a faith correct? Should we have no faith? Should we just make up our own faith? What's the point of this whole conversation? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I am Matt Odegaard, your host, and I really appreciate you coming by today. I know your time is valuable, and you could have a lot of other things that you could be doing, but you're here instead, and I appreciate that. Whether you're listening on regular speed, or if I talk too fast, and you want to go double speed and just really hurt your brain, either way, it's fine. I love that. And if you're listening on audio, I really appreciate that. If you want to see some of the videos that we'll look at today, you can jump on video as well at churchpublic.com, scroll to the podcast tab, and you can see me there. Either way is great, and I appreciate your time and your support. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Share this with one person if you feel this helps you and might help them understand what it means to follow after Jesus, what it means to live in this world. Today, we're talking about the law. Really, we're talking about the law. I get this question all the time. Can you legislate morality? Is that even right? What if someone doesn't believe what I believe? Is it right for me to say, hey, you have to live a certain way? That sounds like a really empathetic question. It sounds like a really good question that I shouldn't impose my reality upon you. I shouldn't impose my morality upon you. I shouldn't tell you what to do. But the question really comes down to, what do you think laws do? That is exactly what laws do. Laws tell you you can only do a certain amount of things for yourself or for other people. That's the reality of every law. And the reality, whether you'd want to admit it or not, is this country, as well as Canada, England, Australia, many other westernized countries, are based in this very same law, which is based not on just some sort of natural reality, some natural morality that you just get by walking around in the woods and figuring out who you are as a human. No, the morality, and thereby the laws that that are based on this morality, they come from something. And in fact, in America, in England, in Canada, in Australia, other westernized countries, this law comes from the Bible, just plain and simply, straight out. There is no denying it. It comes from the Ten Commandments. It comes from Deuteronomy. It comes from various other laws that have been codified. And this is the funny thing, right? You get back to this thing that you may have heard in this Supreme Court Roe versus Wade issue, this stare decisis, which means that there is a precedent set forth, and that precedent determines what you do in the future. The really funny and kind of ironic thing is, the very laws that we have today in morality, in the Bill of Rights, etc., are based on the precedent that has been set over literal thousands of years at this point from the very Bible. And you can go back to the Magna Carta. You may remember that word from your eighth grade history or something like that. Even that was based on the Bible. And our code of law, our common law, through England, through Britain. I'm not going to go through the whole historical process right now for you because you would probably go to sleep, and that's fine. But the reality is that's what it's based on. And in opposition to that natural law, which we think we have because we walk around and see things outside or inside ourselves, we decide this is how we are and this is who we are. Or, as we're just going to hear from North Face in a moment, nature lets you be who you are. That's apparently their law. So this is what North Face is now telling us. I'll just let you see this. There's no other way to do it.
Nature lets you be who you are.
Even gay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are cordially invited to the Summer of Pride with my friends at the North Face. We're traveling all the gay across America, and everyone's invited.
And this is where we are. This is where we are as a society. But there are a couple of things that we need to point to that actually make a difference in this clip. And while, as I pointed out yesterday, we're not even yet in June, which apparently is Pride Month. Now it's just the summer of Pride, but really it's all Pride. It's all just Pride. It's all gay. If you're gay, that's fine. Or actually, if you're gay, that's good. You should be gay. In fact, everyone should be gay. It all should be gay. That's what we're told by all of these companies. And I've brought many of them to your attention before. This is just another one in the long line. So it's not even surprising at this point. And I almost didn't play this, but the reason that I play this is their catchphrase really illustrates what I'm talking about. And we're going to get to AOC, which actually dovetails into this whole thing as well. But their catchphrase is, nature lets you be who you are. That really is the fundamental idea of this generation. Nature lets you be who you are. You can decide based on what you see outside or walking through the woods or what you have in your heart or who you be you or live your truth or whatever. You get to be whoever you want to be. That's the reality that we're living in right now. And therefore, because this has a religious connotation, don't miss that. This isn't just something that I invented. It isn't just science, because we're not basing things on science anymore. Because as you just saw in that clip, and if you didn't see that clip, I'll try to post it somewhere else on social media if I feel like it, because it really is terrifying. You may just need to go back to churchpublic.com and watch that. But at any rate, you see this hiker who's wearing a North Face jacket, and then he's transformed into a trans person who's wearing some kind of tent. And so it's a person that is a hiker, but now they're a trans tent who's gay because they say they're gay. I'm just telling you what was in this video, right? I don't even know what to do with that. But anyway, that's what it is. They're wearing a tent as a dress, and they say they're gay, even though it's a drag queen trans labels. Anyway, doesn't matter. So this is the catchphrase, right? Nature lets you be who you are. And that is the message that we're told, that you can look out and determine this is who I am, or look in and determine who you are. I don't really know. It's wherever. The difference that we're talking about here is, can you arbitrarily invent nature? Can you arbitrarily invent the law? Can you arbitrarily invent your gender? Apparently, this culture tells you you can. The tradition of Scripture, and Scripture lived out in human flesh in the person of Jesus. Jesus is the Logos. Jesus is the Word. Jesus is the embodiment of who God is on this earth, and the Word in flesh tells us something different. He tells us that there is a reality, and the reality can be known. It's not a mystery. And that reality has certain rules. And those rules govern us not to squash us or to oppress us or to make us feel terrible about ourselves. But those rules, that law, shows us the mistakes that we make and shows us the need for a Savior, and therefore shows us the path that we can take to connect with God. This is the gospel, and this is the good news of the gospel. Unfortunately, we're at a place where we don't really preach this anymore. We don't really teach this anymore. We're going to look at that in a second, too, because there is a disturbing survey that I came across by Barna and the Center for Cultural Research that shows us that some pastors, I guess, are not teaching the Bible either. We need to look at that. But before we get to that, let's look at AOC, because AOC is really mad. She's big mad about religious freedom. And I played you a clip earlier where she talks about the fact that many faiths do not have the same definition, as she would say, as fundamentalist Christians. And I do agree. There are many faiths that have a different view of reality, a different view of values, a different view of life than do religious Christians, or as she would say, fundamentalist Christians. That's true. This is the larger clip that I want to show you that comes in the context of abortion and some of the things that she says about that. So let's play the larger clip and then we'll talk about it.
People who say, oh, but you're harming a life. I believe this is life. Well, some religions don't. So how about that? Our Jewish brothers and sisters, they are able to have an abortion according to their faith. You know, there are so many faiths that do not have the same definition of life as fundamentalist Christians. And so what about their rights? What about their right to exercise their faith? It's ridiculous. And it is theocratic. It's authoritarian. It is wrong.
So there you have it. She's talking about abortion. She's talking about what is life, and that certain religions have a different view on what is life. Now, she's absolutely right on this. I don't think she's right on the Jewish thing because I haven't met a Jewish person who said, I mean, I guess there are some non-practicing Jews, so Jew as a race, not as a religion, who could say, yes, I'm for abortion, but generally Jews who are Bible-following Jews, you would call that Orthodox Jews, would say no. The Bible is very clear that life begins either at conception or there in the rounds. There's some difference in the Torah and some of the law and prophets, depending on how you do that. But very clearly, a life is a life. In a Judaic view of religion, anyway, her take on that, I don't know what Jews she knows that are saying that abortion is good or it's okay. That one throws me for a loop. But to go on, she's absolutely right. There are religions that are natural religions, like think of some of the Native American religions that sacrificed babies or humans or ate humans because they were cannibals, or some of the Pacific Islanders who ate people because they were cannibals and sacrificed babies, or think of some of the Greeks who sacrificed babies, or some of the Romans who sacrificed babies. I really could go on pretty much all day with every society that I can think of. I could just keep going on lots of different societies that don't value human life. So she's absolutely correct that fundamentalist religious Christians do value life in a different way. I would say that value is inherently better since they elevate the value of women and children above pretty much any other ideology that I can think of. I mean, other than some of maybe the paganistic mother goddess religions, where the mother is elevated. But even in some of those, they sacrificed the mother to their altar by killing them, as well. So those all didn't end up as well for the mothers either. In a traditional Christian, and even back into a Judeo value before Christ, the woman was elevated to a status that almost every other society around the Jews, around the Christians, did not. And when you go to babies, especially in the terms of babies, Christians valued babies. Christians saved babies repeatedly in Greco-Roman culture where they lived, where exposure, we talked about this before, exposure was a thing. And it was a thing that was practiced quite a bit. You can go and read back into the Greco-Roman culture. When they didn't want a baby, they just left it outside. And there are many, many historical stories of Christians going to save the babies that were left outside and raising them, adopting them, essentially, because they knew by gospel story and by the very nature of who God is, we are adopted into Christ's family. So the Christians back then and even now say we would love to adopt people who are not wanted by their families because we do the same for others as Christ has done for us. This is literally the gospel. So I agree with her. Yes, Christian, and whether you want to use fundamental as a derogatory term, Christians fundamentally value life more than almost every other religion. I mean, that's just inherently true. It's unarguably true. So then we get to this weird point of her conclusion is then we should argue for these other religions. And that's really where I want to go today, because she says we are encroaching, a Christian is encroaching on the religious freedom of someone else because we say, for instance, in this issue, you can't kill some other person for no reason. And we're encroaching on another religion based on that. Now, I've said this before. The Satanic Temple in Texas is arguing right now in court for the right in their religious practice to have abortion. They literally want to have killing babies as a part of their religion codified into law in a court case. That seems extreme, but that's exactly the same argument that AOC here is making, that certain religions don't value life, so they should have the right to kill life. I mean, is that really what we're talking about? And so to go one step deeper, this is what we're talking about. Do we agree on our morality? And our founders would have laughed at this. I mean, our founders would have said, like, this isn't what we were talking about. We weren't religious freedom, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, the First Amendment, religious freedom is not about the right to do whatever your religion wants you to do, like killing people or killing babies or doing whatever. No, religious freedom was the right to practice a religion that the government couldn't tell you that you have to practice a certain religion. People get this wrong so much, and I just want you to, go back to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, read it, read the Declaration of Independence. They're not that long. You could read them. I know the language is a little bit old, but read it and try to understand where they were coming from. They weren't saying you can do whatever you want to do in society. That's obviously not the case. In fact, almost to the person, the founder after founder would say something to the effect of, you have to have morality. You have to have, some of them even said, you have to have biblical values so that you can have self-government. Because if you can rule yourself, then you can rule with everyone else. If you cannot rule yourself, then you obviously can't have a self-government. So if you say, just kill anybody whenever you want, that's obviously not ruling yourself. Small example, but it does hold true. So we had an agreed upon morality that this was based on. And as I mentioned, it didn't even start with America. This goes back to the common law of England, which also goes into Canada. It also goes into Australia. The current common law of England still has the same. The law is based on precedent. The precedent is based on the Bible, the Ten Commandments, and how you applied the Ten Commandments literally for thousands of years. That even goes back to the Magna Carta and beyond. I'm not going to go into all of that today, but the reality is this law is based on something, and it's based on something bigger than my personal experience, and bigger than your personal experience, and bigger than the founder's personal experience. It was based on something that had been tested over time and proved in occasion after occasion after occasion. To throw that out and say, we need religious freedom, and that by religious freedom, we mean I need the ability to kill people. I need the ability to do whatever I want. I need the ability to say that I'm a woman when I'm not. Like, these things are not in religious freedom, even if people argue that they are. So how do we live in a society without an agreed upon morality? That's really the question. Do we agree that there is a morality? Do we agree that there should be a morality? When you say to me, or when you say as a statement, you can't legislate morality because you can't tell me what to do, what you're actually arguing for is anarchy. You're saying anarchy in Greek means not laws, no rules. That means that you want to do whatever you want to do, anarchy. Is that really what you're arguing for? That everyone should be able to do whatever they want to do in every aspect of their whole lives? I hope you can see if that's really the way we live, we end up in some weird Mad Max reality that I don't want to live in, I can say. I don't think most people would want to live in. Or you end up in a Middle Eastern reality like Afghanistan, where a ruling class of medieval warriors tell everyone what to do. That's the kind of reality that you get when you don't legislate morality with a biblical foundation. It just is. This is actually real. You will have laws. You will be ruled. Thousands of years of human history tells us this is true. You can pretend that you're smarter than everyone that has ever lived before you. My guess would be there's at least a couple that might have been smarter than you. Thousands of years of human history has told us that someone will arise to rule. The only question is, where do laws come from? Do you want laws based on the caste system, like in India? Do you want laws based on Islam or Sharia law, like in the Middle East? Do you want laws based on the Hammurabi Code? Do you want laws based on Native American gods of human sacrifice or fertility gods? Sure, that may sound like an extreme example, but I'm telling you, every society bases their laws on religion. There is no exception. Well, I guess that's almost true. I can give you an exception. I'm going to go ahead and go back on myself and say there were a few people who tried to eliminate religion from government entirely, like Marx and Engels and Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot. And those governments were responsible for around 100 million deaths over the course of around 70 years. So maybe that's not a good example of laws without valid religious world order. Or maybe that is a good example of what happens without God. Either way, it's terrifying. To remove religion entirely just doesn't work. And we've seen that over and over and over again. I even had another friend who said, well, real communism has never been tried. Real socialism has never been tried. No, it has. The problem is it just doesn't work. It never works. It cannot work because they try to rule without religion and they try to rule without morality, which means that instead of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet, and the like, telling you what is good and what is bad, a person is saying, you have to do this. However arbitrary that is, that's what that person says. And you have to do it because they have the guns or the swords or the weapons or whatever. And they will kill you like they did to 100 million people if you don't follow them. This is the reality of human nature. Human nature is bad. We go bad. I know you'd like to sit there and think, well, no, people are generally good. Read Romans. Read Romans 1 and 2 and 3 and 6 and 5 even and 8 and 10. Basically read all of Romans and you'll see, as Paul points out, that human nature really is not good. Read Genesis when we fall from grace because we make some bad decisions. Over and over and over again, humanity makes bad decisions because we are fallen, because we are broken, because of sin. This is why we actually need the law. This is what the law does. 1 Corinthians tells us this. Ephesians tells us this. It goes on, that the law shows us who we really are and that we cannot possibly get there on our own. And yes, this has gone too far in some instances and turned into legalism. It's turned into a thing that the legalism makes you follow all of the little minute laws. Think Pharisees, think legalist, as AOC would say, fundamentalist Christians. Sure, there are some of those. That's a danger with introducing the law. But how do you know what to do if you don't know what the law is? There has to be some middle place. This is the only example that I'm going to give today of a middle place. Usually I say you can either go this way or this way. Really, that's not where we need to be with the law. We need to have the law because we need to understand what is right and what is wrong. The law of God shows us this. Sometimes, as Protestant Christians, we've thrown the law away in favor of grace and said, we need grace so much that you can just do whatever you want and God will cover over your sin. While functionally true, the problem is practically, if you don't know what to do in this world and you just invent the Bible or you invent your Jesus or whatever, that ends up in a bad place. And that is what we see over and over and over and over again. We see this idea where I don't know what's actually in the Bible, or my pastor has told me what's in the Bible and they were wrong, maybe, or I took it the wrong way, or I just didn't like it and I made up my own thing. That's what we see over and over again, and that's where we get into this weird secular humanist thing. This is the problem that we live in right now. And this is a good point that I think AOC brings up, and a point that I hear from all kinds of people. I hear it from secular humanists that want Marxist, socialist, communist rule. I hear it from hedonist pagans that want to party like it's 1999 or until they literally run out of time. And unfortunately, I hear it from some Christians. I hear this idea that we're not supposed to have law or look to the laws or figure out what the laws are, or you be you, or nature tells you who you are. So just be that. And this leads me to a survey that I came across from Barna and from the Arizona Cultural Research Center the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. So this was the American Worldview Inventory of 2022. And these results really are a big problem. This is, I think this is a big contributing factor to the confusion that we have. And this is what I've seen for a long time. This puts words and statistics to what I have known and felt and actually witnessed anecdotally over the course of a couple of decades at this point. I have seen that churches are either not teaching full gospel or they skirt around hard issues in order to be nice or not offend or something. And that's created this generation, this culture of Christians that don't know what Christianity is. They don't have a Christian worldview. They don't follow after Jesus. They don't read their Bible. They just don't know. And I know we all carry some of that blame, but the reality is it's time to jump in and learn. It's time to jump in and find out what they are. So here's what the recent Barna study coming out of ACU says. This is quoting the survey. A new nationwide survey among a representative sample of America's Christian pastors shows a large majority of the pastors do not possess a biblical worldview. So I need that to sink in for you. What this survey is alleging, and I'll say alleged, though, again, I have anecdotally and even personally seen this to be fairly true, though the numbers are lower than I thought, and I'll tell you the numbers in a moment. This is a really big problem, that pastors don't hold a biblical worldview. Whether or not they know it, they don't hold it, they don't preach it. And this is a really big problem. So here are the numbers that come out of this survey. Just slightly more than a third, 37%, have a biblical worldview. And the majority, some 60%, hold a worldview known as syncretism. I'm not going to get into what that exactly means. It's a rather big word, and I don't like to use big words because I don't want to be confusing. Just to sum it up really quickly, syncretism, if you come across it, means that basically you take some parts of a bunch of things and syncretize them together. Right? You could even say, like, you probably know the word synchronize, right? So it means you just took all these things, threw them in a pot, and said, this is my Christianity. By the way, as a note, I'm going to reach down here and grab my Bible if you're watching. That's not how this works. You get to read the Bible and do what it says. You don't get to like rip pages out that you don't like because you don't agree with them. That's just not how God works. God is God. God is never changing. I even came across a pastor the other day. I didn't clip it to show you, but I came across a pastor the other day that said, God is always changing, so we need to change with him. No, sorry, that is wrong. God says he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Actually, that's what he intently and specifically says. So no, God isn't changing, and so we don't get to change God to fit the cultural times. I hear people say, the times have changed, the culture has changed. We're not in 1st century BC or AD, with Jesus and the apostles, so things are different, so we need to change the words of God to be different. No, that's not how it works. Humans are not that different. That's the thing to note here. Sure, the culture is a little bit different, but really it's not that different, and I could go on and on about that. I'm not going to today. But humans are not that different. We still do the same things, have the same issues, do the same sins. Really, the times have changed a little bit. The technology has changed a whole lot, but our hearts have not changed that much. I want to get a little bit more into this study before we close up here. So the proportion of different pastors varies a lot. And I think this is even a more troubling statistic for me. Senior pastors, about 41% have a biblical worldview. That's not great. You want your senior pastor to, again, read the Bible and do what it says. I don't know why I need to say this. Why do we even need to say this? What else would you do, senior pastor out there? Read the Bible, do what it says. All right, I'm just going to keep going. But here are some higher problems, or lower problems, as it were. Only 28% of associate pastors had a biblical worldview. And here's where it just tanks into the toilet. And I just don't know what to do with this. It really, really concerns me, to be honest. Teaching pastors are 13%. So you're telling me when you surveyed pastors in America, the ones who taught the Bible don't believe the Bible? Seriously, like, it's kind of infuriating. What in the world? What are you teaching? That's a story. We'll get to that in a moment. And then one more, I'll give you that. Then I'll give you two more. Youth pastors, 12%. That's a big problem. And this gets back to that thing that I'm talking to parents about constantly with public school and private school and churches. Make sure your pastors are teaching the Bible. If only 12%, that means 88% of pastors don't have a biblical worldview. So what are they teaching your kids? That's a really big problem. And as a parent, you should pay attention, and you should meet with your youth pastor, and you should ask him biblical questions. What are you teaching? What part of the Bible are you teaching? What pastor are you personally reading out of the Bible that's not in preparation for a message or a sermon? Are you actually reading through it, or do you actually know it? Have you even read through the Bible? These are real questions that should be super easy answers. Apparently, according to this survey, they are not. And I'll give one more, because this one hits close to my heart. Having been an executive pastor for a while, only 4% of executive pastors have consistently biblical beliefs and behaviors. That should be terrifying. The executive pastor, the person that administratively runs the church in some way or other, doesn't have a biblical belief, and they're running the church. Okay, this is a really big issue. Like, alarm bells should be raised. Warning flags should be flying all over the place. I'm going to get into a couple of the categories because I don't want to get too far into the survey, but it is interesting, and you can go and look it up. I'll try to put the link in the description. If I forget, though, you can go to Cultural Research Center of Arizona Christian University. This study is called, again, American Worldview Inventory. So, a couple other categories, because we need to understand this to get to the point of what we're talking about, because we are talking about the law. Can you legislate morality? Should you legislate morality? That's really the question that I want to dive into today and really drive home. This study has implications on that. They had categories like purpose or family value and value of life, or who is God in creation, and what is your faith practice? What is sin and salvation, human character, lifestyle, behavior, and finally, biblical truth and morality. That was a category. The most concerning part of this entire survey to me is that the lowest metric of all pastors surveyed was in biblical truth and morality. And I think that is the kernel that connects to what we're talking about when we talk about law, when we talk about can you legislate morality, when we talk about what even is morality. If our pastors in churches, by low percentage, even know what is or are teaching at all biblical truth and morality, this is a really big problem. And then I'm not surprised when I have, what do I say, Christian friends who come to me and say, stop talking about this. You can't legislate my morality. You may have a certain morality. I've had Christian friends that I've known for decades come and say, okay, I believe you, but you can't say that everyone needs to believe you. You can't say that a baby is a baby. You can't say that you're not allowed to kill any baby in the womb ever. You can't say that because that encroaches your morality on someone else. And you can't do that because you can't impose your morality on someone else. Why? Why can I not do that? Which morality would you like? Would you rather go to the morality of baby sacrifice for all the time? Would you rather go to human sacrifice? Would you rather go to cannibalism? Would you rather go to Sharia law where women are not allowed outside or to show their faces at all? There will be a morality. I'm trying to paint this picture for you, and I hope you understand. There will be morality. I think the biblical morality based on freedom, based on the Ten Commandments, based on that Decalogue, based on Jesus' words, I think that's a better morality to live in. And I think the results of that show with the largest prosperity in the history of the world. And I think other moralities show all kinds of human suffering. I'm not saying it's perfect because we are not perfect. And we constantly make mistakes as people, as leaders, as members of the society. Sure. But by and large, in generalization, which morality of those do you think is better? You have to choose. You cannot sit and say, well, you just do you and you live your morality. That and the reason you cannot is this North Face example. I know you thought, well, that was just a silly example. Why did he show that? No, this is a really serious example because that's what you get. When you say there is no morality or make your own morality or choose whatever you want, this is what you get. And not only that, in the middle of the woods wearing a tent, you get trans story hour in a library that's for public school students. You get radical LGBTQAAIP plus #$ in your kindergarten classroom. This is the reality that you receive when you say that you can't legislate morality and that morality is whatever you want to make it. That's what you get. You have to choose something. What are you going to choose? And it concerns me that pastors are not preaching biblical morality. I know. There are some good pastors out there. I know some fantastic pastors. But apparently there are also some really bad pastors, and I can't sugarcoat this. If you don't believe and follow the Bible, read it and do what it says, or read it and preach what it says, you are not a good pastor, period. There's no third way. There's no way that I can sugarcoat that in a different way. If you're a pastor and you don't have a biblical worldview, if you're a pastor and you're not preaching what the Bible says, you are a bad pastor. There's no easy way around that, and you need to figure yourself out or quit. Or just stop calling yourself Christian and make a cult or something. I don't care. But you cannot be a Christian and not follow the Bible. There's just no way. We need to stop being nice about things like that and say, well, they'll come around sometime. Well, they're just being them. Well, you just be you. Well, just live your truth. No, you can't. I have compassion for those that are hurting. I have compassion for those that are struggling. I do. You might not hear it in my voice, but if you got to know me better, you would know that I do have compassion for those that are hurting. I really, really do. But when we're talking about general statements and general law, the law of the land, the common law that we practice and enforce to create a morality where the best possible situation can come out, we have to make some of these decisions, and some of these decisions don't feel nice. Did you hear what I said there? Don't feel nice, because love doesn't always feel good. I know that's so hard for us to understand because we have been taught now for decades at this point that to love someone means to let them do whatever they want. That's just so wrong and so unloving. Would you let an alcoholic go off into an alcoholic binge because they just want to do it? Would you let a drug addict kill themselves by overdosing just because they want to do it? No, of course not. That doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense in any course. I know those are extreme examples, but the reality is true for everything. Would you let a person who drives really fast speed through every red light? No, of course you wouldn't, because they're going to kill someone or themselves. Every situation is the same. Every law legislates morality. Every single one. You cannot argue with me. You could try, but I guarantee I could come down with a response making every single law a moral law, because every law has a literal life and death consequence. Every single law. The only question is, who sets the morality? And really, that's the question that we're arguing through now. We're trying to figure out, are we letting nature rule, like we saw in the North Face ad? If you feel like doing it, you can do it. Is that even a law? No, that's just anarchy. No rules, like we talked about in the Greek. Anarchy is just no rules. You be you do whatever you want. That's no rules. And that will lead to chaos and paganistic Mad Max rituals. Like it, and we see that actually happening in society and go, how is this happening? Because we've said there's no rules, like Outback, no rules, just right. This is what many people apparently want in the world. But really, I have one more caveat on that. I'm getting close to the end. I hope I haven't bored you. I probably have, but anyway. It's not anarchy for all of them. And that's the frustrating thing that we have seen over the past couple of years. And that's where some people are waking up. They're not becoming woke, but they're becoming awake. They're realizing that there's a small group of elite leaders that want rules for thee, but not for me. They want you to follow all of the rules, but they don't have to follow any of the rules. Because you little plebeian, you little poor person, you are not as sophisticated as they are. You do not understand the wisdom that they have gained through their inherent wealth and place in society. Those people right now are meeting in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum to discuss the fate of the whole global community. And you, silly person, you don't have the brain cells to understand what these really smart people think and know, because you can't possibly know this. That's what they think. It's not just that they want anarchy, it's that they want to rule over you. We've seen that so clearly over the past couple of years, and there really are only two sides to this. Either you fall into the Christian worldview of biblical morality on which literal Western civilization is built, or you want something else, something much older. Rule of yourself. You be you. Live your truth. The only problem is apparently you don't see yet. It is that nature which you keep asserting to. It's that same nature, and it abhors a vacuum. That nature, when you say nature tells you who you are, so you can just be who you are. There are people right now who are saying, yes, you silly nature people, you silly people live your truth, you silly people do whatever you want to do. They're sitting there at the World Economic Forum saying, now we will control all of these people who think that they can live outside of the law, who think that they can just make their own rules, and who think they can do whatever they want. And they will gently and wonderfully and lovingly pick you up and say, I know what's best for you. I will tell you what to do, and you will love it. This is what they're doing, and if you don't have any conscience, if you don't have any character of your own and law of your own from the biblical worldview to stand on, they will take advantage of you, and you probably will like it. You just can't live, as John Lennon proposes, with no countries and no borders and no religion and no government. Someone is going to govern. That is what's going to happen. Again, I am a student of history, and I am a nerd, and I know that. But the reality is, a cursory look at history tells you that someone will govern, and it will be the person that is the strongest. Will it be based on the just and moral person of God and the Bible and biblical morality, or will it be based on someone's view of morality that may or may not include you? This is the choice that we really have to make. You can't sit silently on the sidelines and say, this is all going to work itself out, and we have freedom in America, and we have all these rights. I'm telling you, we have the rights because of the biblical morality that this society was based upon. When you take that away, those rights will go away too. I hope that you can see that. This is not a scare tactic. This is not to induce fear, because I'm not afraid. Christianity has persisted under far more persecution than we're having now. But the reality is, this is the direction that we're heading. If we don't collectively come to God, repent, and follow after him, then the society is going to go in a direction that collectively we probably aren't going to like. And that may be the direction we go. And I'm not scared of that, because God is bigger. And if that is what happens, it's in God's plan. And Christianity will continue to grow, because the gates of hell cannot stop the power of Jesus. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to him, and his kingdom is reigning now and forevermore. And this is the reality that we live in. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether you include that in your worldview or not, that is the reality. It's a lesson that I hope you learn sooner rather than later, and I hope that you pour into who Jesus is so that he can work in and through your life as he really wants to do. And I hope that you follow after him with your heart and soul and mind and strength. With everything that you have, follow him. So thank you for choosing Church Public today. Thanks for being with me. May God bless you and keep you. And as always, keep faith. Thanks again for choosing Church Public. I really appreciate it. And if you want to give a review, give a 5-star review, like, subscribe, and share, I would really appreciate that too. I just want people to be able to follow Jesus with all that they have and engage in this public square, because more and more, it's a crazy town. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.